Everybody is aware, I wrote it in the chat, the session is being recorded so that we can share it with anybody who wasn't able to attend today. Oh, hold on. Here we go. Now it's recording. Alrighty, so as I mentioned, I'm Karolina, Career Advisor for OAC students. Thank you to everybody joining us today. I would like to welcome Megan Stanley, Certified Professional Dog Trainer and Founder and President of Dogma Training and Pet Services, who's going to talk to us today and provide some information about becoming a professional dog trainer in Canada. I'm going to allow Megan to tell us a little bit about herself and her journey to this career in just a minute. Just some quick housekeeping rules. Please keep your microphones off while Megan is speaking to avoid any unnecessary noise. But if you do wish to talk, you can either use the raise hand icon at the top of your screen and raise your hand and unmute your microphone when you're called on, or feel free to type any questions you have into the chat and we'll be looking at that and making sure that questions are being answered. Megan can let you know if she's open to questions during or to wait until the end. I'm okay either way, whatever you're comfortable with there, Megan. I encourage any of you here today, please turn your cameras on. It helps us feel like we're actually talking to people. And it's just so much nicer that way. So if you don't mind turning your cameras on, it'd be much appreciated. Thank you so much again, Megan, for being here today. And I will turn it over to you to introduce yourself.
Awesome. Thank you, Karolina. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I don't see your faces when I'm doing this. And so, Karolina, I absolutely don't have any problems answering questions as we're going along. And I love being able to speak back and forth. You can do it in the chat, or you're welcome to raise your hand. And then if you can navigate that for me, that would be amazing. So feel free to interrupt me at any time if you have questions as I'm going through this. I'm going to go through the presentation, and then I've left time at the end as well that we can have a discussion on some of this stuff, and I'll answer questions. So before we begin, I'm going to give a little bit of an intro with myself. As Karolina said, I own Dogma Training. I'm based in Calgary, and we've got 2 training facilities. I've been training dogs for almost 20 years, around 20 years now. I've been working with them in some form. I opened up Dogma in 2006, and I started as a private trainer. I was working with rescue groups and vet clinics, and then I started recognizing that we had a lot of very well-intentioned people that were opening up dog facilities, but there weren't people that had any real formal training in canine behavior or training communication. So I saw a real opportunity to be able to help dogs more. I actually come from the shelter world and decided to start my own business to help prevent dogs from ending up in the shelter world. So as Karolina and I were speaking before, though, I was asking just sort of what typical people attending this would be, and she was speaking to that a lot of people think that they maybe are moving towards vet school, and this was very similar to my own story. So ever since I was young, I wanted to be a vet. I wanted to work with animals, and it seemed like vet was the route to go. And I was working towards that right until my last year of high school. And it actually wasn't until that last year that I started really assessing the career and recognizing that it's maybe not the route I wanted to take. And it wasn't necessarily the relationship I wanted with animals. I love vets. We work closely with them, but I wasn't interested in the medical side so much on a personal level. And so I stayed with the job I was at. I was working in high school and ended up going into the exciting world of software development. So something completely different. But with that time, I learned some skills. I was doing e-commerce. I started my first business doing web design, and then I was working from home, so I had the opportunity to then volunteer with the Humane Society, and I was so excited about it, fill that need of working with animals, and my life shot off from there. So I was saying I spent more time there, I think, than I did with my job. I absolutely loved it. I gained lots of experience, and then realized you could have a career being a dog trainer. And so that's where I initially started. And it really is following that passion. Just, I was putting so much into it, and I just wanted to learn everything. And I really saw the need, because I'm going to speak a bit about the industry, but anyone can really just hang their hat up and say that they're a dog trainer. And seeing some of the fallout from dogs that was very preventable stuff, I really wanted to get my education first. And so my letters behind my name, those are 3 certifications, and they're the only internationally recognized ones. I'm one of, under 100 people around the world that have all three of them. And the CBCC is the behavior consultant, and the KA is knowledge assess. And I was one of the first 4 people in Canada to earn that designation. The knowledge assess, the CPDT is a certified pet dog trainer, and it's knowledge assess and skills assess. So I'll talk more about those and what they sort of mean within the industry. But I do take that side very seriously because we know better, we do better. And my ultimate goal is just helping dogs be successful in our busy human world and with their families. So in my journey with opening up Dogma training, seeing that need for qualified trainers, we've sort of set out Dogma training to set the standard for care and training. And so we do this by having certified trainers. We're the only day school facility that guarantees that 100% of our team is certified. So even our admin staff, they go through a handling certificate. They're well versed with dogs. We've started Dogma Academy in that time, which I'll speak about. So helping people become dog trainers. I really am passionate about this industry as well. So I do a lot of board work. I did some board work with the Association of Professional Dog Trainers. I was the first Canadian to serve as chair for that. So that's the oldest and largest association for dog trainers. It's been around over 25 years now. And currently I sit on the board for the Canadian Association of Professional Dog Trainers. I also do some local work with community therapy dogs. And we have our own foundation that started from my very first dog that sort of led the path of Dogma as well. He came with lots of behavior issues, and we call him Dogma's canine co-founder. And we've got a foundation in his name to help terminally ill pets. And we just help them be successful and offer support. So my life has literally gone to the dogs, and I love it. So if you love dogs, there's so much you can do with this. So I was excited to speak about this topic. So I'm going to share a bit first about what a dog trainer is, what we do. I'm going to chat about the options for education and how you can move into this career, and then also what the career looks like, what we do. And then, as I mentioned, I'll leave a Q&A at the end. And so when we talk about a dog trainer, obviously we train dogs. That's a big thing. And I think most people think about that. We just think about working with the dogs, but there's this huge element with working with dogs that we also are training the people. So particularly in what we focus on at Dogma, and what majority of dog trainers do, is we're working with people to help them with their dogs. And if we're not communicating to the human end of the leash, we're going to have difficulty getting through to the canine side. If we just had to work with dogs, it would be incredibly easy, but we work with people as well. And so you've really got to enjoy working with people and help them with their dogs. So really a lot of what I'm doing when I'm working with clients is I'm training them to train their dogs with their work. So there's a big consultant piece of it as well. And currently I do consulting work with other dog trainers. I help them with their business side. I help them, develop their programs. We help trainers with their skills. And then you're also kind of working like a counselor almost sometimes with families with their dogs. There can be some really difficult situations with dogs as well. And so there's quite a lot involved in that side of it. You can do performance and competition work. So I've got friends that their entire career, they've got dogs that are trick dogs and they do amazing things. And their entire career is traveling around with their dogs and performing with them. So there's some really neat stuff you can do with that. There's also, there's search and rescue. There's dogs that are actually working jobs. And so you've got people that are utilizing their own dogs and they have a career together where they're doing work. So lots of really cool things that dogs can do and you can do within this career as well. And that's one of my favorite things, is there's so many options. You can work as an employee, you can work as a contractor. A lot of people have their own business and they work as contractors with other businesses. We've got at Dogma, we employ dog trainers. So one of the things I'm looking at is really helping people develop careers. So we want people to have a career path, advancement. We want them to be paid well. We want to make sure we're taking care of them and really demonstrate, because there's this idea that, dog trainers, it's not a lucrative career, and there's sort of this misconception there. So that's one thing we're really trying to change, and we're seeing the industry grow that way. And you can be a business owner. It's really easy to open a business as a dog trainer. As I mentioned, you could just do this tomorrow, say that you're a dog trainer and start a business with it. I'm going to speak more on that, but it's great because if you have that desire, it's such a great industry to get into. There's such opportunity there and flexibility that you can really create whatever path you'd like within it. And then there's also opportunities as we're seeing dog training grow. I know people that are making tremendous careers just off speaking careers. You know, there's some that are doing blogging and social media influencer type things, and they're doing that full time and doing really well with it. So again, lots of opportunity. So when we talk about this too, one of the things that's really challenging, but I also think is exciting right now with our industry, is that it is unregulated. And so this means, like I said, you could just say that you're a dog trainer. We have lots of people that just say they've been born and raised with dogs, so they've got those skills, they're a natural. You don't have to have any education behind you to do it. You don't have to have experience, you know. And even for myself with our facilities, there's no regulations there whatsoever. So anyone can open up a facility and you can basically do whatever you'd like behind closed doors, and there's no one observing that. And so we're seeing a lot of follow-up from that with dogs. And so there's a big drive within the industry. We're seeing it happening in other parts of the world. I'm involved with some of the groups I'm involved in the States. There is licensing being put forth for dog trainers. And so that's exciting. We're trying to hopefully be proactive, that it's in a way that can work really well for dog trainers and also for the dogs and their families and just the general public. So I think there's some excitement there, and we have this opportunity to really drive that forward. And the dog training industry is actually really good at self-governing in that sense. And so there's an expectation for trainers and professional trainers, and we're also starting to see the public recognize that as well and demand more. So in my journey since I've opened Dogma, I've really seen that shift. So at first we were doing a lot of education, and we were the first to say that we would only have certified dog trainers teaching classes, and we would see a lot of owners, they didn't really understand why that mattered. So a lot of our focus was educating them. You know, we do really small ratios of staff to dogs. So we've got the lowest ratio with that. And we've got all these things we put in place that ultimately sort of cost us money as a business, but allow us to make the right choice for the dogs and for our team. And so it took a lot of outward education at first when you're competing with, you know, companies that maybe weren't making those same decisions. Whereas now we see that owners are coming and they're asking us these questions and telling us what they want to see. So we're seeing a real shift in the industry that way. And it's definitely where we're going to move forward. Our goal is that we can reach that before something really awful happens, which is tends to be what drives regulation and licensing. So when we talk about dog trainers too, I'm going to bring all of these up because there's different terminology. You'll hear everything from a canine coach to a dog lifestyle advisor to a dog psychologist to a behaviorist. And I think it's really important that we understand these terms, particularly if you're looking at the industry, but we're also seeing, again, the public becoming more aware of what these terms mean. So a certified dog trainer is someone who is working with puppies, doing basic obedience, maybe some sporting stuff. They're focusing on just helping dogs learn general obedience, or maybe some specialty skills. When we talk about a behavior consultant, we've got people that are educated and they've got certification in behavior. And so when we talk about behavior, we're thinking of fears, phobias, aggression, separation anxiety, and it's these more complex behaviors. And so we've got people that have the education and they've been certified and have demonstrated their knowledge and experience with that. And so I can call myself a behavior consultant because of that. What I can't call myself, though, is a behaviorist. And so a behaviorist is someone who has a PhD or a master's. And then we also have veterinary behaviorists. And these are board certified vet behaviorists. And so we do want to be aware of that and how we're using these terms. Maybe it doesn't mean a whole lot to the general public, but as we look at sort of the industry evolving and regulating and licensing happening, these terms matter. And so I think this right now is sort of where everyone understands and we respect this. And what we're also seeing is a lot of collaboration between these groups too. So I work with vet behaviorists, I work with vets. I was on a call this morning, I was on with some animal behaviorists, some certified applied animal behaviorists, and so we can work together and provide a much more well-rounded approach. And ultimately it's great because if I have a dog that's really struggling, I can work with a vet behaviorist and we can maybe get the medical needs addressed or make sure all of that is in line, and also any pharmaceuticals or anything that might be required for the dog. And so I'm going to give just some general traits to this. I'm going to bring them all up and speak to them. These are just a small skill set of what's really involved, and ultimately it depends what to do. I spoke about the loving people as well, and you could have the opportunity, I could have someone that works with me, they come and they're a day school trainer and they're working with the dogs on the back, and maybe they never need to deal with the owner, and so that's fine. However, they still got to deal with us and their teammates. So one of the worst things someone can say coming, and if they're looking at working with us, is saying that they want to work with animals because they don't like people. It's just not great. We want to ensure that we're empathetic, and that empathy, I think, is enjoying people, because people can struggle a lot with their dogs, and there's a lot of pressure on dogs, and there's all this stuff that's happening. And so we have to be very empathetic about what the owner is going through so that we can help them. Communication skills are critical. I've got to make sure I'm providing the information in a way that is easy for the client to follow. One of the things we really focus on is ensuring that we're keeping things simple and in layman terms, and so that they can be successful with their dogs, because they are not dog trainers. And so we really try to make sure we're helping them with that. Being patient with the dogs and the people, because everyone's on a learning curve. It's not second nature to them. And being a problem solver is really important as well, because you're always solving problems. If I work with a dog, and I've got to be able to observe and then figure out what to do next. And if it doesn't work, I've got to be able to assess that and be able to switch modes. So problem solving and being creative is a really big part of the job that allows us to be more successful with the dogs and the people too. So what maybe worked with 200 people might not work with the 201st person, so I have to make sure I can problem solve that and be creative and offer them solutions in a variety of ways. And you really need to have a desire to learn. So as I spoke to the industry regulating and changing, it's also really exciting because there's so much research being done now. The domestic dog actually hasn't had a lot of research done on it. We've done lots on wildlife, but we haven't done a lot on the dogs that are so intertwined with us day to day and part of the family now, that we're seeing more studies being done, and there's some fascinating stuff coming out. There's more information coming out on the impact of stress, and canine cognition, and even, neuro stuff. There's lots of really fascinating stuff. So you can always be learning, and it's something that I think is critical for a dog trainer. So we're always staying on top of what's happening in the industry and with dogs. So I'm going to speak a bit about how you become a dog trainer. I think the most common way a lot of people do is they adopt a dog, or maybe they get a dog that has behavior concerns, and suddenly you're sort of thrust into this world of dog training. We see that happen a lot. And then we also see people that have an interest and they connect with a local dog trainer and do some mentorship with them. And this is what we saw a lot. This is how I started. It was great. I was able to obtain my certification, but there was a lot of gaps for me within that. Even being mentored by someone, there was gaps in sort of the knowledge, and it was relatively new as well. The industry has evolved a lot, but what a lot of people do is they go and they work with a trainer and they gain those skills. Where I'm a huge advocate for going beyond that and going to school is that you do get all facets of it. So a great dog training school will cover the dog training side, the human side, give you some business skills, go beyond just dog training, and also some of, the emotional skills and mindset, and prepare you for the industry, and also working with dogs. So it's quite well rounded. I listed a few of them. So the Academy for Dog Trainers is Jean Donaldson. She is a guru in our industry, and it's a wonderful, wonderful program. Animal Behavior College is one of probably the most popular, but very limited and hands-on, but they're evolving constantly, and it's great for beginner trainers to start. And Catch Academy as well, they're based out of the States. We have Dogma Academy, so we actually started that. I started that because I was seeing so many trainers that were coming, and it's not, especially then, it's not like you could just go to school to become a dog trainer. And I was seeing that we could give them so much, but a lot of them weren't successful. There was a high rate of failure because they weren't gaining enough skills to really have the confidence and experience. And so we developed that to really help people. Ultimately, you can then say that you're a dog trainer, and then I'm going to speak about the next steps to certification and really becoming a professional dog trainer. If you are interested in dog training as well, I recommend you can join any of these associations. So the CAPDT is our Canadian Association of Professional Dog Trainers. There's the Association of Professional Dog Trainers, which is international. It's based out of Kentucky. And then there's the International Association of Animal Behavior Consultants. And so they work with all sorts of animals, but ultimately you learn it's all the same. Learning theory and everything applies to all animals. And so there's a lot of crossover and really great information. So all of these organizations provide some level of just you can become a supporting member. And so you still get access to the information and can learn more about them. And then they have great resources as well. And it's a good way to get started and see if that sparks stuff and you're really interested in it. So I'm going to speak a bit about what to look for in a school. Karolina and I were talking at the beginning about how the challenge with dog training is there's just so many options out there and it can be difficult to navigate. And a lot of people have opinions on stuff too. And so there's some great schools out there and just ultimately what you want to look for if you're considering a school. So one of the things you'll hear spoken of a lot with dog training is LIMA. So LIMA is your least intrusive, minimally aversive. So what that ultimately means is that when I go to work with a dog, my first choice is always to be least intrusive. I don't want to use punishment. You'll hear terms like positive reinforcement, reward-based training, and ultimately we want to ensure that we're doing the least amount of harm on the animal. And so we want to teach them what to do. We want to make that rewarding. We want to ensure that we minimize stress to the animal. We should never be using physical force, fear, intimidation. And so you want to look for a school that does take a stance. One of the biggest challenges with dog training is there is such a shift. There's this wide range of how we may approach training. However, if you look at the academics, the associations, everything, they'll have really strong position statements on how we should train. And, one of the things I value the most with a lot of them is that I sign code of ethics, I do standards of practice, I make sure that I'm following LIMA and that I'm held to that within a lot of my associations or certifications as well. And so it's really important because we want these animals to be safe. We want them to be successful. And so we want to ensure that we've got the knowledge to be able to do that in the least intrusive ways. The other thing you want to look for is that they do provide hands-on experience. Now, lots of schools, we've shifted. We've got people across Canada that come to us for training, and we still require hands-on from them. We do this in so many ways, and one big piece of that is that mentoring and coaching piece. So it shouldn't be you just kind of learn the theory and then go to. There's some trainers out there that have brilliant knowledge with dogs, but if you don't have that hands-on experience, you really are limited. And so you want to make sure that there's some element of that. And at the very least, you're doing that. You're going out and you're working with as many dogs as possible. My work in the shelter environment really allowed that experience with so many different dogs. I was responsible for behavior assessments on every dog that came in. I could do 20 to 30 dogs a day, and I would go without knowing anything about the dog and test for the potential of aggression. And so you really needed to understand what the dog was communicating to keep yourself safe. And then I was responsible for stress reduction programs within the facility. And so I worked with so many dogs, and it provided this base experience that really enabled me to see success much more quickly because it just becomes second nature. I would also suggest looking at graduates. Most schools should be fine. They should have a list of graduates. They should be willing to share. You can contact some of them. They'll have testimonials and you can speak to them. And I think graduates really demonstrate the caliber of a program as well. So if you've got graduates that are going on to do big things and they've got businesses and they're successful and they've worked and that's sort of where it started their career, it's a really good sign that that school is doing great for trainers. And then testing. We don't like testing on our side when we have to be tested, but it's so important that you're being tested for your skills, and a school should help you be successful with that testing, but they should test a wide range of skills. So you want to make sure that there's some element of that. It's not just an open book test, but that you're actually being tested on your skills. It's not maybe fun for us, but it's so important, and it allows you to do the best you can as well. When I spoke about certification, if someone finishes one of our schools or the other ones that I listed, there's a whole range of them out there as well, though that's just kind of the most popular one. But the APDT has a matrix that outlines all of the dog training schools and has the details on what they offer. So they've done a really good job at helping people make a decision with what they're looking for. And then what happens is you become a professional dog trainer, but we want people going past that to real certification. And so those designations that I have, in order to write my first exam, I had to have 300 hours experience working as a professional dog trainer. About 225 is actually as a head trainer, and then you can take 75 that's just experience working with dogs. But what's great about that is that you've got that experience there, you've been working with them, and then you go and you write that exam. And I think it's about 200 questions, and it's just multiple choice, but it's tough. You need to know your stuff for it. They only do 2 exam runs a year. You pay for your exam, you go and you do it, and if you pass, great. And then what you have to do is recertify every 3 years, and there's a continuing education piece to that. And so I get continuing ed if I'm teaching. So if I go and I teach a workshop, I can get continuing education units for that. I can also get them for going and attending a workshop. I have to do some skills assess CEUs too. So I have to make sure I'm doing a workshop or I'm teaching a workshop that includes some element of actually handling and working dogs versus just this type of format. And so what I love about this is that I need to stay on top of my education. So I just recertified this past year on these. And so you go in and you answer some tests, you re-sign your code of ethics. We have to make sure that we've got our CEUs, and then we sign off for another 3 years. So as people finish our program, they've got to move on to this. So we want to see them obtain this designation within 2 years. What makes CCPDT different than just regular certifications is they're part of a professional testing corporation. So there's really high standards. There's all of these requirements, and that's what really allows them to be a recognized group. As we're seeing licensing start to come into place as well, we're also seeing that states and countries and places all over the world look to the requirements of the CCPDT because of these standards. And so other things are considered, but a lot of the time they're really looking to this. And so this is great for industry. If we look at people being licensed and you need to have this type of designation or comparable ones, this is great because this is making sure that we're signing that code of ethics. I can get my certification revoked if I go against that code of ethics. So if I go out and I do something really heavy-handed, if I promote dangerous things, if I give a guarantee to dog training, I can have my certification revoked. And I value that, and a lot of trainers do. We're like, as I mentioned, we're good at self-governing. And so we'll see this. I think this is what we're really going to see on trend for the next 5 to 10 years. With my board work, we're always talking about it. The dog trainers want it, the public want it. So we'll see this continue to evolve, and it's a good thing for us. So when we talk about working as a dog trainer, I want to speak about the actual career. And this is what everybody thinks. It's the puppy therapy at your fingertips. And so often when I talk about working as a dog trainer, people say that, like, we get to play with puppies all day. And yes, there's an element to that. I'm going to share a video here. And so this is one of our trainers, and we do videos where we're sharing it out to clients, and she's just doing socialization. We socialize to a bunch of different objects. She gets this whole crew of cute little puppies, and she's introducing them to new things and pairing it with positives. And we do a lot of focus on puppies. And so you can choose to niche. I know people that work just strictly with puppies. So if you absolutely love puppies, you can do this. And puppies are busy. You've got to be okay with cleaning up messes. You can imagine we're working on house training. Puppies are active, they're busy. So our most senior trainers are the ones that work with our puppies because we're preventing problems from developing. So you really need to understand behavior and canine communication, but it's also so much fun. So we get to do this work with them and really help them be successful and develop these great dogs. And so puppy therapy definitely at your fingertips. If I'm having a really stressful day, I can go in and snuggle a puppy for a while, and I have tremendous gratitude for that side of the job. We've got wonderful animals we work with great families, and so it's amazing. If you love dogs, this is the best part of the job. The other side of that, though, is I didn't want to share a video with this. I just have some pictures. You're also going to work with some dogs that have some pretty tremendous behavior concerns. I talked about my dog Guinness. He came to me with a whole range of behavior concerns, and he was terrified of the world. He was about 100 pounds, and he demonstrated his fear through pretty aggressive, reactive type responses that were terrifying for people. He was lunging at leash, he was barking, he was growling, he was trying to get people to leave. He was a huge risk. We had dog fights, all of this stuff. It was incredibly emotional with him as a dog, but it was also, he was my greatest teacher. And so it allows me this empathy when I'm working with people that struggle with this, but there's also a side that it's incredibly emotional and hard, because the reality sometimes as a dog trainer is we know what's best for the dog. We don't necessarily have families that support that. And so that can be really difficult at times. And we hear a lot of people coming into the industry and they want to work with aggression, they want to work with fear, and it's great. I mean, I want every trainer ultimately to have a good understanding of behavior, because you're going to be exposed to it. Like I said, we work with puppies, and senior trainers are in there because they need to understand this side of it. But it can be really tough. We have to work and talk about and have situations where dogs are euthanized for behavior concerns, and that can be really challenging. It's a part of the industry that I think we really glamorize the puppy side, and we glamorize this working with aggressive dogs and helping them, but it's also a really challenging side and can be heartbreaking, and so we talk a lot in the industry about compassion fatigue. Dog trainers, we love what we do, so we give it our all and we want to help these dogs, and sometimes there's things out of our control. Sometimes too, we're actually having to advise and making the choice, helping families come to the choice that maybe euthanasia is the best option for the dog. And so it's always a disclaimer I put on dog training. And you don't have to. You could work with puppies and that, but there's still that side that even with a puppy, an owner may go and do the opposite of what you're thinking is best for the dog, and it could result in some pretty sad situations. And so it's a very, very tough side of it. But the reality, we've seen a shift with TV training and that, where we put tremendous expectations on dogs, and it's become really tough. There's also this great side where we're seeing dogs integrate more, and we can include them in many more activities. But it's important to recognize, and if it's an area that really breaks your heart, you have the opportunity to not have to deal. You can protect yourself from it, but it's important to understand, if you're looking and you want to work with these dogs, that you understand that there is some real challenges. But there's also a lot of support in the industry. We work together, but we see a lot of trainers really burn out and struggle with having to deal with some of this element. Sometimes it's, other dog trainers too that are making really dangerous choices on the dogs because we're not regulated. And as you start to understand dogs more, you can see situations where dogs are very unhappy. Things are going hard on them, and they're suffering, and that can be a real challenge. But we'll give that cleanser. Then we also get opportunities where then we can have a tough situation and turn and then walk and deal with this. So this is our guy. He's a great little skateboarder now. He absolutely loves it. And so you can go to that puppy therapy side and work with that. Some of the things too with this is that as you work as a dog trainer, what's so great about it is you have the flexibility to really do what you'd like with it. And so I'm a bit of an anomaly as a dog trainer because of the business side. And so I came in, I've got 2 facilities, the academy. I've really built a business around dog training, and my goal is to help dog trainers with that, because a lot of people get it come into the industry because of a passion and a love. And so we don't always make the best decisions for ourselves and take care of ourselves. And so we want to help people be successful. It can be an incredibly lucrative career that you love, that provides you flexibility and can really, address all areas with it. And so the other side of it, you could have a full-time job. I know lots of people who have a full-time job and then just work as a dog trainer on the side, and they love it. So there's some great opportunity. You can start right away and build your business as well. There's not really any barrier to entry. As I mentioned before, you can specialize in any niche too. I know people that work specifically with aggression, some work specifically with separation, some may work specifically just doing, sporting stuff, agility work, some work just with puppies, some only do private group classes, some only do speaking and writing work. So it really is great that way that you can carve out your niche and you can change it too. You can change your focus. There's so much flexibility. There's so many different things you can learn and really specialize in that I really love that side of the industry, and I think it allows it to be much more accessible to people. You're always learning and growing. The one thing I've loved to see evolve is just the access to conferences and webinars and seminars and reading materials, and as I said, all the research. So you really, if you love that, this is an industry that really fills that, and I think is also a requirement for it. You can't really be stagnant as a dog trainer. You'll kind of get lost. There's always new information and tools and everything coming out. There really is a great network of professionals. So when I talk about the challenges with the industry, I was on a call this morning with other trainers, and we just do a monthly meet where we connect and we can talk about some of those challenges, and you have people that understand that, and there's just such support within it. And so there are some challenges like any industry, but I think ultimately you find those people, and our goal too, and part of what we're working towards is that we really start working together and collaborate. It's just better for the industry, and we're starting to see a real shift that way. I spoke about the compassion fatigue. That's where having that support network and everything, but you can build a life, that work-life balance. Being a business owner, I definitely have the challenges. Karolina and I were talking this past year has been challenging, but I have the opportunity to make those decisions for my own life, which is great. And so I really try and encourage people to follow their dreams and follow what they love, because you can create this life where I don't feel like I'm working a lot of the times. It's hard work, but I love what I'm doing. I feel like we've got a mission. We've got big goals to work towards. I've got like-minded people around me, my team and dog owners, and it's great. So I feel like work-life balance, there's a lot of challenge with it, but there's so many rewarding pieces of the job that it's really great in that sense. And I think you can be in charge of that, which is great. So ultimately, what's the best thing? What is the most important thing with being a dog trainer? You must love dogs. And I think anyone who's even exploring this as a career, you love dogs, that. And the nice thing is if you find, certain types of dogs are challenging for you or anything, you have this opportunity to really niche that and work with what you want. But the best thing about it is, dogs give so much to us. So we love dogs because of their loyalty, and that therapy side. They've been proven to give us health benefits. I know my dogs, they get me outside. They just are always there for me. They're honest, they're loyal, they're the best. And so what I love about my career is that I can return the favor. And so what motivates me is helping people so that we can really improve the lives of the dogs and the people that love them. So it's great. If you love them, it's definitely an industry I encourage you to at least explore, because there's just so much opportunity. So I'm going to open it up for questions now. What I will do, this is the information for Dogma. That's my personal email address, and I do welcome people. If anyone has any specific questions or anything, you are more than welcome to reach out to me, and I'm happy to help. So Karolina, I'll go ahead and close this out here.
Thank you, Megan. That was so informative. I learned a lot. I'm having an echo now, which is distracting. But yes, no, you've answered so many great questions that I've heard from students. And I think that you've provided really clear and concise information and a lot of great resources. So thank you so much. I really hope that individuals do have some questions. I have some pre-prepared questions of my own, but I'm not going to take over. I really encourage you all, if you don't want to raise your hand and chat and ask, please feel free to at least type something in the chat box, and then we can navigate that way. Miriam, I see that you have raised your hand and you have a question. Please go ahead.
Yes, so I have contact. Oh my, I'm not muted. I'm muted.
We can hear you.
I can hear you, yep.
You muted yourself now, though, I think, Miriam.
I wonder if I can unmute you. No. You just have to click the microphone one more time, Miriam. There you go.
Okay, awesome. Yes, it was frozen. So yeah. Okay. I've contacted somebody from like who also works as a dog trainer. She said there was like the industry is like saturated with people right now, I guess. I don't know about like what do you think about that point?
I hear this a lot from trainers, and I think where I sort of sit with this is that's a bit of a scarcity mindset. So currently, you know, I've heard it even we ultimately are training our competition with what I do with teaching dog trainers. And I think that we view this growth as a threat against us, but I really view it as it's a sign that the industry is growing. I mean, there are in my city alone, there's like $150,000 or 150,000 licensed dogs in the city. We're not reaching all of them as trainers. You know, we're not reaching them all. And so I really think that it is people see new dog trainers coming in and we view it as that's going to take away, but I think it's a sign that it's growing. We're busy right now. People want to train their dogs, and so I hear it a lot, and I can understand where people are coming from, but I really encourage people to view it differently, that it means that we're growing and there's great opportunity there.
Okay, awesome. I have two more questions.
Sure.
So, one, so like I also from that email that I messaged her, she said like it doesn't that job like you put in so much, but sometimes it doesn't pay as much. What do you think about that point? Like it doesn't pay as in like as in like physical pay, not like emotional pay. I know it pays a lot like emotionally though, so yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of it. Again, I think too where that's where we're trying to shift the narrative from trainers, because ultimately I decide what money I'm going to make when I go out and I charge from what I'm offering, right? And you definitely, with your experience, you can charge more. So a new trainer, you know, a lot of trainers just go and they go, what are most people charging? And they choose, it's surprising how many will actually decide to charge a little less because they think that's going to give them an advantage, but it's not great for the industry as a whole. And so, you know, one thing that we really try and encourage people to do is charge their worth, know their value, and you create that, I think. And so there are even, that's where I was saying with our business, we want to create full-time careers and we want to pay people a good salary and make sure they have all the benefits. That's pretty new in our industry because usually it's just, you know, people love dogs, so they'll work for less. But again, I think that's starting to shift and we'll see that change.
Okay. So one last question. So for resources about dog training for service dogs, where can I find any that are like reliable?
The CAPDT, so the Canadian Association for Professional Dog Trainers, they've got great resources. I can even, if you go to their website, it's capdt.ca. I believe I can share in here. I can even just look that they have a whole service dog section and it's really related to Canadian laws, and it's amazing the work that's gone in there. I don't have my browser open here, but I can look and see. I'll see if I can at least, pardon me?
I can put it in the chat right now. I've got it.
That would be great. I think that's the right address there, and they have on their menu, they have a whole thing with service dogs.
Okay, awesome. Okay, okay, yeah. Okay, one more question, Okay, so for somebody that like has no experience with dogs, I mean, with like owning a dog, like where do you think is a good place to start? Like, I volunteered in like an animal hospital, but like probably volunteering in a shelter would probably be next. But with something with service animals, where can I find something to start like looking into that industry more?
They're always looking for puppy raisers and volunteers. So I would look, there's a lot of different organizations with the service dog groups. And so I would just reach out to one of them. If that's an area you're interested in, they do the best. And a lot of them are looking for volunteers. And it's a great way to kind of get your feet in the door and just like get some experience with it and see if it's what you're interested in, you know? And so sometimes it's finding the right organization that matches sort of what you're looking for, but they'll be the best to talk to for some good opportunities.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Miriam. I see Ishika, you have a question. Your hand is raised. Go ahead.
Hi. So first of all, I just wanted to say thank you for taking time out to do this. I actually started the call while I was finishing my dog's walk. So I was like, oh, maybe I could just stay outside. It's pretty nice. But I came down here. I wanted to kind of get your opinion on trainers who have the, like, I know positive reinforcement has its pluses and minuses, but trainers who only say positive reinforcement, just because my experience, for my dog, for example, his dad was trained as an unaccompanied cadaver dog for the Israeli army. So I do Schitzen with my dogs, and I've always done Schitzen with my dogs. So in Schitzen, positive reinforcement is, you have sometimes where you need to use negative reinforcement because you're doing bite work and things like that. But I had an experience with a dog trainer up here because my dog was a puppy. I brought him up from the Caribbean. I'm taking him to socialize, and a Great Dane actually went and chopped down on its neck. And first thing I did was grab it by the scruff and pull it out. And I was like, do not do that. It wasn't my dog, but my dog was being threatened, right? Because he's small. Well, at that time he was small. Now he's a 115-pound German Shepherd. And the trainer went off. She said, "Oh, that goes against what we do, and that's not positive reinforcement." I was like, "Okay, but if he killed my dog, because that was what could have happened, right?" Like, I just wanted to kind of get your take on positive. I understand positive reinforcement, but at least in my opinion and my Schitzen trainer's opinion, negative reinforcement has its place for situations like that.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And you've just experienced some of that emotion, and where I was talking about the divide kind of within the industry. And it's tough because people get very emotional about their animals, and that can create, and passionate. And it's one thing actually we talk. So even myself with my business, we're reward based because we're not 100% positive reinforcement, and that's understanding how operant conditioning works, right? However, we do take really strong stances against the use of positive punishment and things that would cause any kind of fallout. So as you go deeper into behavior, what you recognize too is your first step should be reward-based, positive reinforcement. That should always be your, and skilled trainers don't need to go to really aversive methods because we focus on teaching the dogs what to do. And we understand that often punishment suppresses but doesn't change behavior. However, I'll use stuff where if my dog, like, I go to give a dog a treat and they jump up to grab it, I'll just withdraw it. Right. So technically, right, I'm not using, and so that in itself can be a form of punishment. So there's lots of, and so as you understand those terms, it's just people can become very passionate about it. But we're even seeing within those worlds, we talk the police force, even any of that, we're seeing huge change in how they're viewing it, and they're going more because we're understanding the impact and the stress and the fallout and behavioral fallout of these dogs. So we've got places, the Italian police force, and that they're not allowed to use, it's against the law to use e-collars and some of these things. So they're forced to kind of make different choices, and we're seeing far better results. And so that's something too, where even within your world, you'll start to see there might be some people that are very resistant for it, but we will see some remarkable change start to happen because we know we can do better by the dogs and get better results with different choices.
Yeah, I've seen it actually. So growing up in the Caribbean, when you do Schitzen bite work, one of the things they do is they take like a stick and they like start hitting the dog, right?
Yeah.
And growing up, that's what I knew because that's what I was exposed to, right? And as I grew up, and I'm like, that's not right. Trying to like get it through to some of these people, it's just like, you can use other methods. So I take a pool noodle when I do it with my dog, like a pool noodle from the dollar store, because it's the same thing, right? Because you have to have that part, right? But at least in my eyes, it's better than a stick. I mean,
No.
I get whacked over the head with a pool noodle all the time. So
Yeah, and we're seeing that, like, it is just that shift with it, and ultimately, and that's where I was saying, like, with the research and everything that's being done behind it, we're starting to see that evolve, and I think that's great. And people like yourself that are coming, being like, I think we can do this differently, which is great.
So I guess kind of what I'm taking, it's like my mom explained it like a cookie jar, right? When you tell a kid they can't have a cookie, all they want to do is have the cookie, right? But when you kind of have the cookies all the time, right? You have the pop and everything all the time. It's just like, oh, whatever. It's not that big of a deal. And they still do what they have to do, right? So she kind of explained that with dogs. But she said at the same time, if a kid does something like, if you're in the pool and a kid tries to drown you, then you take the kid out and yell at him, right? So it's the kind of the same thing with, you kind of just have to react appropriately, I guess, right? Like,
Yeah, and I think it sort of speaks to the compassion fatigue. So I actually have a lot of empathy with trainers that do respond that negatively, because typically it's that they've had to witness and endure a lot of watching people make really dangerous choices and animals that are suffering, because we'll give all the excuses why this isn't hurting a dog or isn't, doing all of this stuff. And so a lot of the time these trainers are coming from a basis that they love dogs and they're fighting sort of this thing, and they're continually having to witness things that are very, very difficult. And I've gone through it myself. I've gone through stages of this where that emotional piece is unreal and very difficult. And so we're trying to be more proactive and educate trainers earlier in their careers on things that they can do personally for self-care, make choices, boundaries within the business. Like I built the business in a way that we really attract ideal clients. So we're not dealing with this conflict. And so we don't have to face some of these cases that I had to face on early in the career, because ultimately we're doing it because we love dogs. So if we're seeing choices that are causing dogs a lot of suffering, that causes a lot of suffering to people that love them, right? And so it's not being combative, but often it's very much an emotional response from those people. So I try to encourage people to have empathy on both sides and not look so much at the argument, but maybe the motivation behind things. And it allows us to open up to much better conversation on it.
okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for the awesome questions.
Yeah.
I see that a few people had to run, and you have some thank yous in the chat. I don't know if you're able to see that, but a few people have said thank you to you that they had to go, but you've been really informative. I see, I don't mean to single you out, Hannah, but you're the only one left that hasn't asked a question. Feel free to type it in the chat if you have any last minute questions. And while we're giving Hannah the possible opportunity, I'm just wondering, I know that I mentioned to you, it would be nice if you could speak a little bit just to kind of what's happened in the industry with regards to COVID and what you think will happen going forward. We were talking about how everyone and their brother is getting a puppy, and is business booming, and do you think that it will continue to boom, or will things die down when people are looking at making this a career in the future? What are the prospects for them going forward?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a great question, because it's been challenging on a business side, but we've had, the pandemic puppy thing is real. So we've had I work a lot with rescue groups, and they were literally cleared out. I have friends, I think it was in one of the big shelters in New York, and they were saying they were completely clear of dogs. Like, it had never happened in the history of the organization. And so there's this huge demand for dogs, and we really tried to get the education out. We were doing things like we would do live streaming puppy classes, because we were sort of limited in even what we could do. We have the benefit of our day school. We never had to close that, but we saw this huge increase, and we're seeing this big demand for dog training. We're seeing a big demand too, like with the school, people wanting to become dog trainers. What we're sort of seeing as we're a year out, so dogs that were adopted early in or came into families at a young age, we're seeing that they are, when they come into class, they've maybe not been in a new building, let alone, so we're seeing a different level of dogs with confidence issues and fear concerns and all of this. We're seeing an increase in reactivity because the world's getting busy and maybe they're exposed and we've missed some of those critical times. I do think that there's some pluses. We're teaching dogs. North America, we're really bad at teaching dogs to be really excited about every person and dog that they meet. So when suddenly they're not given the opportunity to meet everyone, there's an opportunity to teach dogs better skills, which I think is good for them. But we're also seeing, we've been able to move stuff online. And I think that by moving the dog training online, we're reaching more people. One of the things we've been able to do as a result of COVID is provide quality training at a lower cost. So we're seeing it kind of demonetize a bit too, which is great. And so that means we can, people are more open to online learning. So I think we'll see this continue. I think that one of the best things is as people have had to live at home with their dogs more too and be around them, we're starting to see maybe how we influence them and also maybe what they get up to in the day. And, even for the dogs, they were used to, these quiet days where the kids were gone at school and now everyone's at home with them. But I think we're seeing that people are even more understanding on why dog training is important for dogs.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And we did have a question here from Hannah. I want to make sure it's answered. And then Isha, I see your hand raised, but I'm just going to give Hannah a chance to ask a question. She has written, if you have any advice when approaching a shelter or an individual, if you're looking for hands-on experience to ensure that you're learning about the training and not just the animal.
That's a great question. So I lucked out, Hannah, because a lot of shelters and rescue groups, typically with the first volunteer type role, is that it can just be animal care. And there's a reason for that, partly because, that's a high need, but also just to get people in and that's where the training happens on the shelter and sort of their procedures and making sure that you're going to make the best choice for the animal. So it's a little bit of an interview process on you as well. Sometimes when you're coming in, I know it's the same with my business. Everyone sort of starts at the same level coming in, regardless of experience, because we're essentially interviewing their skills. And because it's live animals, we want to make sure they're making that right choice. However, look for the roles that they have. So a lot of organizations will have different volunteer roles. And even if you get in the door, you can demonstrate your commitment to them and the helping and the animals, and then just let them know what you're interested in. So if you're interested in training, so my example, when I went to the Calgary Humane Society, the dog walking was the entry level position. And so I was applying just to get my foot in the door, and I lucked out because a training assistant role had opened up and they were in need of people coming to help with classes. So I was able to move into that. That would have been my path anyways. With going to a trainer or anything, we have lots of people that approach us about volunteering. We do really intensive training, so we tend not to bring volunteers into the business for that. But if someone approached and they want experience, just approach them your interest and find ways to help, because we get a lot of people that just want us to sort of give them all this opportunity where it needs to be sort of a two-way. And that's really if you can come in and ask them where they need help, where you can help, you're eager to learn. It is just kind of doing that groundwork in the beginning to help, but then you really demonstrate, and that's what will allow you to grow. So if I didn't answer that specifically for what you're looking at, let me know. You can clarify. But usually, some groups get inundated with volunteer requests. And so really just go in there that your goal is to help the animals and that you're make sure they're a right fit for what you want. But you're welcome. But that you're there to help them. That's good.
Great advice. Thank you. And Ishika has her hand up, so we're pretty much out of time, but we'll take one more question and then.
Yeah. A question and a follow-up question that was kind of unrelated. First, so when everybody came back home, now our dogs they're kind of just like, what the heck? Why are you home so much? And I think once things start getting back to normal-ish, it's kind of going to be a shock to their system again. What do you think would be the best way to handle that?
Yeah, that's a good question. We're actually doing a lot of work. We've been really focusing on that, on helping dog owners prepare for that. It's being proactive. Don't wait until you go back to work and see if they have a problem. So we're doing stuff to encourage them to do like times where they're getting out of the house alone, doing alone training at home, changing their routine. If they know that they might be going back to work, actually like recreating that routine of getting up in the morning, changing all of that, because for dogs that aren't used to that, that can be a real shock to the system. And so just being proactive and pairing it with good things and making them understand again that being home alone is good. Some dogs will be like, phew, thank you, I get some rest now, but
yeah, that was kind of because I'm kind of having that issue with my dogs now because they're so used to us being home. And I mean, Ontario we wake up and we're in a lockdown again, right? So it's very strange for us. And my follow-up question is, where exactly in Calgary are you based, if you don't mind me asking? Because my cousin is getting a dog. I'm from Calgary, like Calgary/Trinidad originally, but she's like, find me a reliable dog trainer, then because she wants to get a dog for her kids, but wants a good dog trainer first because she doesn't trust her 5-year-old to train the dog on.
That's.
So where?
We've got a location by Chinook Center, so Glenmore and McLeod Trail, and then we've got one in the Clarny area, so on 37th Street between Richmond and 17th Avenue.
Okay.
And so the nice thing is, so Calgary, pardon me?
I have a better idea of Chinook, so I kind of think I know where you are because she's about 25 minutes away from the Chinook Center-ish.
Yeah, and then we're close to Mount Royal, if that helps, where we are sort of in the city. And then, but the nice thing is we've got an amazing training community here in Calgary. So if it's not close, like we've got really great trainers in the city. So lots of good options. Yeah, I
will definitely reach out to you directly because I'm very comfy with you, and I'm very comfy with them having you as a resource there. Instead of calling me, Isha, why isn't the dog doing this? Isha, why is the dog doing this?
Yeah. No, we would be happy to help. So.
Okay. Thank you so much. I took up so much time with questions.
No, that's fine. They're great questions. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Karolina.
Thank you. All right. So we're still recording, but I'm going to end the recording portion and officially on recording. Thank you again, Megan, for the amazing information. I'm so impressed with all the questions that you've received. There was, I think, about at one point 6 or 7 attendees, and look how many questions we've received. So that's really great. Clearly you struck a chord with a lot of people and a lot of useful information. So thank you for your time. I'm going to stop the recording and just ask maybe Megan if you have another 5 minutes, if we can stay on together, just you and I.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Bye.
All right, I will stop recording.